Better now. But it's great to meet you. And I want to begin our conversation with surviving the last 3.5 years or so. How did you get through the pandemic and how did it change you?
Oh, it changed my life drastically. I had literally quit my job like a week before because I was going to write a book. And so I quit my job and then COVID hit. And so then suddenly I was at home and I was writing a book and, I was all of a sudden having to take care of my kids and they're not at school anymore. So it was wild. It was a lot of stress, but we managed. We got through it, and made me appreciate my time with my family and friends for sure.
So you've had to go through a lot. You're a survivor and obviously you've gone through career transition. So right now, if we put you in front of a bunch of third graders and one of the kids was curious, it's career day, and they asked you, what do you do for a living? How would you answer them?
So right now, I work for in human resources, but I also do a lot of work with my book and with bringing awareness to Guillain-Barre syndrome. So that's kind of my passion is the awareness for GBS and just, reminding other people that you go through hard times and you can overcome them.
So obviously a big tapestry of your life has been GBS. Talk to me a little bit about, your childhood and how you overcame this and how you eventually got to a point where you're writing and you're an advocate and how you gathered all this strength to do this.
So, growing up, I mean, I came from a very loving family, very supportive. So, I feel like that really set me on the path forward in my life. My parents got divorced when I was very young. And so, I come from a broken home, but like I said, very, very supportive family. And so, I've just always been very resilient and always just trying to move past, that the trauma of being from two families and just trying to kind of prove myself that I can overcome anything and I can get through anything and I can be whatever I want to be. I had parents that really instilled that into me. As I grew up, I really didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what I wanted to get into. I kind of fell into human resources, which was a great fit for me because I love people. I love connecting with people. But it wasn't my passion. And then when I was 26, I was diagnosed with Guillain-Barre syndrome, and my life complaint or changed completely. And I ended up, finding this new path forward, connecting with people that had gone through the exact same illness that I had been through, and realizing, I have purpose in my life. And while GBS, the disease that I went through, it was very traumatic and life changing. It did change my life for the better, and I really do see it as a very positive experience in my life.
So for anyone out there that's not familiar with GBS, what is it? What exactly what is it?
So GBS is a rare autoimmune disorder, and I like to compare it to MS, multiple sclerosis, just because a lot of people know MS and have heard of that. So MS, what MS does is it affects the nerves in your spinal cord and your brain, and GBS is different. That it affects the nerves outside of that. So every nerve in your body. And what GBS is basically, it sees some sort of attack on your body, so an immune response. And for me, it was likely childbirth or the C-section that I had, so surgery. So, like I said, an autoimmune response, and it begins to fight off that attack, and then it begins to continue attacking the body, and it attacks the nerves. And so, what it does is it causes weakness, it causes pain, tingling, and potentially paralysis, depending on the case. In my case, I had a very severe case. It started with a tingle in my fingertip, progressed up my body very, very quickly. Within 72 hours of that very first tingle, I was completely paralyzed from the neck down, breathing on a ventilator in ICU, just unable to do anything.
Wow. So how long did it take to recover?
So I was in ICU for 3 months almost, completely paralyzed, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to communicate. And it was such a hard time. It was such a dark time. But I had to get through it. I had to keep pushing. I had to stay positive, which is very hard when you've got a newborn and you're struggling to, believe that you're going to get out of there. But I did, and I was able to get out of ICU after several months. Once I was able to learn how to breathe on my own, got out of there and moved to a rehab hospital where I learned how to walk again, talk again, basically feed myself, hold cutlery, take care of my daughter. So I got out of the hospital after 126 days. So that would have been, almost 4 or 5 months. My daughter was 6 months old, and then recovery continued at home. So I went home. I was still using a walker and had to strengthen my muscles. So I would say, like, it was a good year, year and a half before I really was able to get back to my regular self. I do have some residuals, but nothing that really affects me on a major basis. It's kind of just, some tingling and pain here and there. But very fortunate because, a lot of people with GBS have varying degrees of residuals. So some people don't recover. Some people are left in wheelchairs using walkers. Some people it may take years and years to recover. So everybody's case is so unique, which is why it's so important for me to share my story and try to connect with other people that are going through, maybe GBS, maybe MS, maybe other similar health conditions, or, just any kind of issues that you go through and you realize that, we're so much stronger as human beings than we truly realize.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's been a hero for you, an inspiration?
His name is Kit. He is a GBS survivor. And when I was in ICU, I was, fighting for my life, not believing that I was going to get out of ICU. And the doctors kept telling me, you're going to eventually recover from this. You will get back to your family. But when you're in ICU, breathing tube, can't move your body, there's nurses and doctors surrounding you at all times. You feel like you're on your deathbed, and it's very hard to believe. And GBS is rare. Most people have never heard of it. It only affects about 1 to 2 out of every 100,000 people. So, it still affects a large group of people, but still rare. And so a lot of doctors were saying, we've never had a case of GBS here before, or we've never dealt with a GBS case. So it was very isolating. I felt very alone, felt like nobody truly understood what I was going through. And then they brought in Kit, and Kit was my hero. He was a GBS survivor who had actually gone through the exact same experience that I had gone through. He had been in ICU for 3, 4 months and he'd recovered. And so he walked into my hospital room, stood beside my hospital bed, and I just knew that, what, if someone else has gone through this and he recovered, then maybe I can too. And he gave me that hope to keep going.
Wonderful. So if you can meet anybody alive on the planet right now that you find inspirational, who would you love to meet and talk to?
I would love to meet somebody named Amy Purdy. So she is a woman who she had meningitis and it came on very suddenly and severely. She was in a coma and she actually had to have her legs amputated, and she recovered from that, and had to have basically major surgeries and major life-changing alterations. But she went on to just become this huge spokesperson for that community. She does speaking engagements. She got into Paralympics and skiing, and she's just a survivor, somebody that I really look up to, who shows that, just because you go through something super traumatic and life changing, it's not the end of your story, and you can do what you want with your story.
So now that you're in recovery, you're writing a book and you're kind of, new year, all of these things are happening. What is the inspiration every day for you to wake up, to continue to evolve and overcome, to write your book and to be who you are? What is that inspiration? What is that drive for you?
A few different things. Number one, my daughter. She was obviously a newborn at the time, and had I not gone through that with her by my side, I don't know if I would have been able to have that drive and that determination to, get back to being her mom and get back to being with her and creating a life together. So she continues to be my inspiration, to continue fighting and going after what I want. And then my other motivation is just the fact that, I spent so much time in ICU, completely paralyzed, never certain that I would be able to move my body again, be able to breathe on my own, walk again. And so that really pushes me in my life to go after everything that I want to. Life is so short. it can change in the blink of an eye. I went from paralyzed to in ICU in 72 hours. So that really makes me go after everything that I want in my life. It makes me very grateful to be able to walk and talk and do certain things. So, I've gone to travel and I've gone to do zip lining and mountain climbing, just things that I probably would have never done had I not gone through my experience with GBS, because it's just made me realize, we're so fortunate to be able to move our body and do these things.
So is there a large community out there? Are you intertwined in the community of survivors?
I am, yeah. I found out that, there is a huge population that have gone through this disease, even though it is still rare. And I had some videos that I had from my time in the hospital, and they ended up going viral. And I was able to connect with people all over the world that have gone through this disease. And so it's been very, very rewarding to find other people, that understand and can relate, and to give them hope, to show them, I went through what you are going through now and you have reason to keep fighting. I am where I am now, and you can get there too.
So, what are some other takeaways? Obviously, you were on a doorstep that was pretty grim. Are there any other big takeaways that you've had that you've realized that have changed the course and altered the way that you live your life now?
Absolutely. I think, just finding the gifts within tragedy. I think when I look back on my time, I lost out on 6 months basically of my daughter's, like the first 6 months of her life. And I wasn't able to take her on her first walk. I missed her first smile. I wasn't able to breastfeed her. And for a long time, I was quite angry and upset about that. But once I got home, I had to really flip the switch and I had to go, I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to be stuck in this mentality of this is what GBS took from me. And instead, I had to really focus on what I gained from it. And so, sometimes it's hard. It's hard to say everything happens for a reason. And I believe that everything happened to me for a purpose. Not everybody believes that, but if you can even just look at your tragedies, look at the struggles you've gone through, and go, what have I gained from it? Even if it's just, it's gratitude for being able to be a mom and to have the life that I have. You just have to really find the gifts.
So, of all of the things that you've done in your life up to this point, what are you the proudest of?
Well, definitely recovering from GBS,
Yeah.
but also my book, writing my book. It came out earlier last year, and I think it was such a struggle because it was so hard to do, and it was so hard to not just give up. But I kept reminding myself, I went through GBS. If you can overcome GBS, you can overcome writing this book. So it was another huge challenge, and I'm so glad that I stuck with it and was able to get it out in the world.
What's been one of the best fan letters? What best responses you've gotten from your book so far?
Oh, so many. I can't even count. Just, saying, we thought that our family member was going to die. We had lost all hope. One specific person really stands out in my mind. It wasn't a letter. It was actually somebody I met in person that said, we had never heard of GBS before. The doctors didn't believe that he was going to make it through even the night. And he didn't believe that either. And he was actually arranging to have, assisted suicide so that he could be taken off life support. And they were almost at that point until they found my story and realized, and he said, if this 26-year-old can do it, I think he was in his 50s or something. He said, if this young 26-year-old can overcome this, then so can I. And he went on to recover.
Wow. So let's say you have a dream tonight. You run into the 18-year-old senior in high school version of you. And based on all of the things that you've lived through and survived and wisdom you've gained, if you could give that young version of you a piece of advice, what would you tell her?
I would say, you can overcome anything. You are so much stronger than you realize. And unfortunately, you're not going to figure that out until you go through the hard times. You're never going to believe that you're strong enough to overcome until you're on the other side. So you just have to keep pushing forward, one day at a time, 1 hour at a time when you're going through those hard times, and just promise yourself that you'll keep trying again tomorrow. And one day you'll be on the other side.
So you've talked about doing things that you never did before because of your appreciation for having mobility. What are some things that you haven't done, big bucket list items that you really want to do?
You know what? I would love to jump out of an airplane. And it's
Nice.
crazy because it's something that I would never have even considered doing before, but to me, I've really become much more adventurous and thrill seeking. Like I said, done some zip lining and mountain climbing, and it's just the fear really holds us back sometimes. And then once you do it, you're like, you know what? It wasn't as scary as I thought. So that's one thing that I would love to do.
So let's say a time machine pulls up in front of your house when we get off this call, and you can go anywhere in history and see one event in human history with your own eyes. Where would you love to go?
Oh, that's a tough question. Um, Anywhere in history?
Yeah,
Hmm, I think the 70s would look pretty cool.
yeah,
I think I would love to go back to the 70s and just see what life was like then. I
yeah,
think it's very interesting to see, we talk a lot about how life is crazy right now and the world is in shambles. And, I feel like a lot of generations have said that in
uh-huh,
years past. And so I would just love to go back into time and see, what did the generations were they saying at that time? Was
yeah.
life just as hard? Did we think that the world was falling apart back then as well?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like the oldies radio. Like I hear all the stuff that when I was young that are on there, but all the other generations thought the same thing. It's just, it just, history is a big carousel. We're just kind of going, but it's a different time. Um, so everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, all of your fans that read your book, but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think I am somebody that's very resilient and never gives up, and very driven. So everything that I have wanted, and really because of my experience with GBS now, that I believe that I can conquer whatever I want. When I was going through GBS and I was learning how to breathe on my own, there was so many times that I struggled. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, and then I did, and so that's just given me this huge drive and this appreciation for who I am and what I'm capable of.
So, Holly, if anyone wants to pick up the book, learn more about GBS, anything about your world, reach out. How can they do that?
The easiest way is just my website, which is hollyaftergbs.com. But I'm also on social media, which you can find on my website. So Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, I've got it all.
Excellent. Holly, this has been great. Thank you so much for your story. I love these stories of overcoming and survival. It's wonderful, and you've evolved so much. So, thank you so much. I appreciate your story.
Thank you so much for having me on and for bringing awareness for GBS.
Absolutely. Have a great 20.